going to try something new this week. A lot of people ask me the same questions over and over again, or they ask such great questions that I feel like I wish I could explain more. And I'm not going to write this ginormous comment because then other people don't get to learn from it necessarily, because we don't all read every comment that's on every video. So I thought, let me try a Q&A series. If you guys like this, let me know. If you have a question that I didn't get to, drop it below. And let me know if this helps you when I go into a little bit more depth with a question that gets asked on the channel. Now, I have a whole stack of questions, but this week I just picked 6. The first one I get asked quite often is, when did you start writing and how long was it before you got a traditional publishing contract? Now, I happened to have a video a couple weeks ago on this. I think this comment came out before that, but I've been writing for as long as I could read. Like, literally, I remember rewriting the endings of the books I read when I was a little girl because I didn't like that the girl didn't get the horse or the dog didn't find his home or whatever it was that I read that I wanted to rewrite. And then when I was 11, I wrote an essay about my family sponsoring a family from Laos, which was a life-changing experience. 3 people in my family not speaking English and all of a sudden learning a new culture and everything. And I sent it off to the editor of the local daily paper. They bought it, and I was 11 and decided I was going to be the next big-time reporter. And so I called the editor of the local weekly and pitched him a story idea. This is back in the day before, like, I even had my license. I was 11 years old. I was in 8th grade. And I did not tell him how old I was. I told him I was in high school, which was actually a lie. And back in those days, you would just type up the story and drop it off at a Dropbox, and the editor would pick it up. So there was no human interaction. So then I found out how old I was for several years. But I quickly found out that I'm not the Geraldo Rivera, get the story at all costs type.
All I can say to Charlie is go to hell.
So I started writing books. My very first traditional publishing contract was a biography of a children's television star in Boston. Now, if you didn't grow up in Boston in the 70s or 80s, then you probably don't remember Rex Trailer from Boomtown. But he had the #1 show in Boston on children's television for 18 years. And I wrote his memoir. That was my very first book contract. My second one was how to publish your articles, because I was very successful at publishing in national magazines and trade publications and a lot of other kinds of places. And I sold that book on proposal at auction. So that was pretty exciting. My second book went to auction. But it took me a long time. If you watch that video, you can see how many rejections I amassed, how many times I rewrote those books before I finally got one that sold. Which brings me to another really common question. I noticed there are so many moving parts in a novel, and every channel, website, etc. seems to have their own take on the parts of the whole, like show, don't tell, plot arcs, things like that. What's the best way to handle all this, and is there a special way a person should outline? And the short answer is no. There is no special way. There is no one answer. There is no secret sauce. Because if there was, we would all be super successful at this. There is the way that works for your creativity, for your brain, for your story. Now, that said, you can't figure out what that is without writing a lot. And you have to understand the different moving parts of a book in order to write a book. It's like you can't build a house and not have any walls in it, right? You can't build a house and not have a foundation or windows or doors. You have to have these parts to create the story, because they are what the reader is expecting from the experience when they pick up the book. Remember, this reader has given you their hard-earned money, and they're now giving you their very valuable time. So if you don't put in a plot, or you don't show instead of tell and then leave the reader with no things to imagine, they're going to feel very disappointed and very angry. So you absolutely have to have the constructs of a novel in your book, but how you write it, how you get from once upon a time to the end, is up to you. Now, back to the experience part. This might be controversial, and I frankly don't care. 99.999% of all the first novels that I have ever seen, come across, or read are nowhere near ready to be published. Nowhere near. If you think about it in terms of anything else in your life, the very first time you walked, you didn't go run track. The very first time you picked up a basketball, you weren't ready to go to the NBA. The very first time you drove a car, you weren't ready to get on the superhighway and go across the country. Like, you're just not ready. You don't have the experience, you don't have the instincts, you don't have the practice, you don't understand all the moving parts that I just talked about. And now I know there are people on YouTube and on TikTok and everything that are like, I've published my first book and it was amazing and it got so many stars. Well, A, either that person is lying and it's actually like their 10th manuscript, but selling their first book made for a great story, or B, the book is not that good, but their fan base is really strong, because you just don't have the experience. I'm sorry, but you don't. I rewrote the book that I finally sold, which was the 8th out of the 10 that I wrote before I sold my first book. I rewrote that fully from beginning to end at least 12 times. And the version that ultimately ended up selling was a 180-degree departure from what that book originally was. And everything else that I wrote, all I used out of all of those other books was 7 pages that I put into book 7, I think. Eventually, I ended up using that in a different proposal. Just 7 pages. Everything else I looked at as practice, as a college course essentially, where I am practicing and trying to figure out how to write a book. You have got to have experience in order to do this well, and in order to know when your gut is talking to you and what your gut is telling you. So don't worry about publishing your first book or your second book or your third book. Look at them as experience gainers where you can get better at what you are doing so that when you do have a book that is really well written, that is worth the reader's very valuable time, it will do well and the readers will want more. You don't have to publish the very first thing you write. You don't have to drive across country the very first day you get your license. So take the time to learn the craft, to do it well, and to deliver to the reader who is giving you something very valuable. That's my publishing your first book rant over. Any tips on writing software? I get asked this a lot. Like, do you use Scrivener? Do you use that? Do you use that? I don't use any of it. I use Microsoft Word because I like it. It's been around forever and I've had it forever, but I don't use any special features or anything in there. Once in a while, I'll use bookmarks so I can find parts of the book. But I believe in writing a book organically from beginning to end, where everything is seen in sequel, an interlocking puzzle. So the character takes this action in this scene, this is the fallout, and this is the reaction, and that creates a new action. So that then everything interlocks within your book. Now I keep notes in notepads. I have notepads everywhere in my house, but those are just basically for me to get the idea down on the paper. I don't always necessarily return to it. It's just so I can get it out of my brain. Otherwise I'll lay awake for 5 hours thinking about it. So whatever works for you though is what works for you. A lot of people are more of a planning type writer or more organized writer, or they really like to know where they use this description and that character name and everything. And so software like Scrivener works really well for them. I just can't. I just can't. To me, it feels like homework. So I would rather just write organically from my gut. You also have to remember that even though I've published 87 books, I have written at least 100, maybe even more, because I had all those ones that didn't sell. So I've done this 100 times. And so that happens much more in my head and in the back of my head than within any kind of software. So I've learned how my gut works and how to trust it. And that just comes basically from experience. Do you want to write a book in 12 weeks and know exactly what should happen at each step of the plot process? Then join my boot camp. This boot camp is going to talk about how to write turning points, how to do scene and sequel, how to create a really powerful black moment, how to plan your book, how to create an amazing ending, and then how to revise it and make it stronger and more emotional. These 12 weeks are here to help you take the book you already have or the book that you are starting and make it that much more powerful and really take that plot to the next level. So join us by using the link down below. Add code YouTube for an extra 10% off and finally get your book idea from once upon a time to the end. Wow, I just drank from the fire hose watching this, Shirley. You put a lot of information into relatively short spans of time. I really have to work hard to absorb everything you say without going back and watching select moments again. I get this a lot because I know I talk fast. I come from Massachusetts and this is me talking slow. And I do try to be very cognizant of how people process. That said, I watch lots of people on YouTube that talk even faster than I do, and I'm okay with that. Some people say it's too fast for them, and I get it, and there is a setting to turn me down to 0.75 or 0.5, whatever you want to do. And I'm not trying to be a jerk about it, but it is very hard, as I'm sure you know, to completely change the way that you talk. Secondly, I talk fast because I would rather be writing than doing anything else in the world. And I bet, because you're watching this channel, that you would rather be writing than sitting here for an hour and a half watching me explain characters to you. It's not to say that I don't have some longer videos, but by and large, I want to get in, get out, get you the information, and let you get to the page. That's my goal. So if I talk too fast, I apologize. Slow me down with the setting to 0.75 and then try to absorb as much as you can. The other thing I want to mention is that you're not going to absorb everything all at once right in the first time. It took me years to learn all of these concepts. Decades. Sometimes you're ready to learn about show not tell, and sometimes you're still figuring out plot and you're ready for show not tell in 6 months. So don't worry about getting everything right off the bat. Just like you're not going to sell your very first book, very likely you're not going to sell your very first book, you're not going to learn all the concepts in one video. This is such great, holistic, organic, simple yet savvy advice. And now I'm curious, Shirley, who is on your auto buy list? I buy so many books. My husband's always like, oh my God, there's another box out here. I'm a paper book ebook girl. I have 2 different Kindles. I don't use either one of them. I try from time to time, but I like paper books. And so on my auto buy list is definitely Stephen King and Joe Hill. I love both of them all the time. Dennis Lehane, 100%. Harlan Coben, Lisa Unger, Ruth Ware, Lisa Jewell. I have so many. Riley Sager, so many. And I'm going to be talking about other books going forward. Like I just came across Chuck Wendig, amazing writer. And I have another one that I'm reading called The Frozen River, and I can't remember the author, but she is now on my auto buy list. She's so good. Those are the kinds of authors that I read their book and I'm like, I really want to be you when I grow up. Like I wish I could write like this. So I think that's a good thing though, because it makes you try harder. And these are the people that teach me all the amazing things that you can do with language and plot and everything else. So there's a lot that are on there. So just watch the channel and kind of see who I talk about, because who's my auto buy can change as I come across new authors. But I really like an author who can show, not tell, and move the plot along at a really good pace and keep twisting the story so I don't see what's coming. So this one, I didn't understand what you were saying. Description, misjump is corruptible. We do our best, but sometimes fail. And yes, sometimes people over describe. I have been guilty of that in the past with the purple prose, way too much of it. My rule of thumb, by the way, for description is to spend your time, your best showing skills on the descriptions that matter to the plot, or the descriptions that matter to the character. So the things that are going to be important for the reader to remember, that's where you put in the show, not tell, because you really want the reader to pay attention and become absorbed and connected with it. And the reader's also trained to pay attention when they see that. How do I get a 3-page story to you for editing, and how much do you charge? So there's a link in the description underneath every single one of my videos for a consult. And how I recommend doing my consults to almost everybody, and how I recommend everybody work with me on the consults, is pay for an hour, but split it in half. 30 minutes of me doing developmental editing on the pages that you have, and 30 minutes of you and I talking about it. Because I can't really talk to you about your book without reading your book. And if I'm going to read your book, I might as well give you developmental editing feedback on it. And so most people, that's exactly what they do. Now, we can also sit there and spend an hour talking about your plot and how to decide what to do next in your plot, or working through your outline, or whatever you want. But for most people, that 30-30 split of that hour is the best thing. And there's a link again below in the description. Thank you all for your really kind and sweet comments, because I've been doing this channel for just under 2 years. And there's a lot of times, especially in the beginning, when it was like I was talking to myself and to nobody else. So I appreciate that more than you know, because there's a lot of days where I'm like, it's a lot of work. Do I want to do this on top of everything else that I already have to do? So I appreciate you all watching. And if you have a question that I didn't get to, or something that's really nagging you that you want to ask me about, or something you didn't understand from one of the videos, drop the question below. I may talk too fast explaining it, but I will definitely answer you. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe. And if you want more on how to show, not tell, check out this video right here.